Tregurtha joins us, who's the Regional Vice President for Sales for Africa at Opentext. Julie, firstly, how are you doing? It's good to see you. Welcome to the My Broadband Cloud Conference. If I had to meet you out in the street and we had to say, well, you with Opentext, what exactly does Opentext do? How would you describe the company?
Okay, well, firstly, hi, Aki. Thank you for having me. Opentext is a Canadian-based global software company operating around the world, and essentially we talk about ourselves as an information management company. And if you think about any organization has a plethora of information existing around the organization, and often this information is not stored inside a traditional ERP system. It could be emails, it could be invoices from vendors, it could be employee files, it could be contracts. So there's all this information that we talk about it as unstructured, that needs to be managed. So that's essentially what we do. We aid corporate organizations, government, and even smaller organizations to manage their information. We're a leader in this enterprise content management business, but also today we offer a broader based set of solutions around discovery, artificial intelligence and analytics, business to business electronic information exchange, and security.
Gee, that's pretty impressive, Julie.
Yeah.
I mean, and obviously all of that under the cloud space. And, as you were talking now, you just talk about, all the different stuff in an organization, the data, it's like all over the place. It reminds me of a way in like my study, sometimes of the year before I've got to do a spring clean, but we're not talking about a digital spring clean over here. But how does Opentext take all these pieces, which I would say it's like a puzzle, right? How do you guys put all of that together into some kind of order?
Well, I think that's the whole thing, is we try and bring a discipline, structure, governance, auditing capability on this information, searchability, as I said, security, and basically a centralized repository, but also sort of an extensive information management discipline. Obviously, capture is part of that, actually capturing some of this stuff. If it's in a physical format, these has to be first captured into a digital format or digitized, and then stored and managed and accessible and be harnessed and be used by the organization to be able to provide more insights and be more innovative.
But I mean, Julie, the cloud journey is scary for most people. It shouldn't be, because it's where it is, and the adoption has been incredible. But many of these organizations have core systems and applications running, a lot of legacy stuff. What's your advice on how organizations should be approaching this move to the cloud and putting all these pieces together?
So, Aki, I think this is exactly the opportunity. The technologies we're talking about at Opentext have been available for a long time. But what it traditionally meant is that organizations would have to go and buy a big piece of hardware and storage and have it whirring in the corner or in their data center, and then they would digitize and store this information on their own premises. That gives them value, but it also comes at certain costs and certain complexities, and having to have their own IT staff managing it, etc. And I think this is exactly what the cloud now is all about, is that it offers the alternative. It offers so many more benefits, where it simplifies things for companies. So whatever we do today, we make available to our customers, both on-premise if that's still their choice, but more and more and more people are looking to go to the cloud. In that journey, in that decision to move to the cloud, we've seen there's a lot of different sort of accelerants. There's a lot of various things that might push that decision, that might be the start of that journey. It's not necessarily starting with a decision of which hyperscaler do you choose or do you go with. It is often around an application service that a customer needs to solve a business problem, and they want to then consume that in the cloud. And so, yes, there's a variety of ways of approaching it. It's not a simple journey, but there's steps that you can take, and there's recommendations. And I'm happy to talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, I want to dissect those options in a second, but just to briefly just talk about the trends. What are you guys seeing at Opentext, this adoption to the cloud? Is it happening at a very rapid pace? I mean, the conversations I've had with different people, anything from 20 to 30% increase in just the last few months. People are really scrambling to get their things done up in the cloud. Customer experience, what we're discussing, there's a whole lot of issues. Are you seeing the same kind of trend adopting?
Absolutely. It's a demand coming from our customers that we cannot ignore. I don't think any customer today wants to look at deploying on-premise. So their first choice is to go to the cloud as a deployment option. So I think vendors are getting dragged there by the customers, whether they like it or not. As you've said, they're trying to all become cloud ready. So the trend is certainly there. You've stated some of the statistics. I mean, we've seen a growth of about 24% from 2018 to 2019 in cloud uptake. They believe globally the market's worth $210 billion upwards dollars, and the other prediction is that within 5 years they believe almost 100% of enterprise workloads will be running in the cloud.
That's staggering.
So to be honest, if you're an organization today that is not considering it, that is not looking at that, you are likely to be left behind.
But at the end of the day, it's great that there's so much choice, so many different providers, and that's exactly what customers want. They want choice, and I think choice brings a lot of flexibility. What's your take on multi-cloud environments?
It's an inevitability. I don't think any customer will be able to, limit themselves to a single one or two cloud environments. If you have a look at the trend globally, they're seeing an average of 8 clouds operating in an organization. And as I said, I think this is, for a variety of reasons. Number one, the application service leads part of that decision. So you might want to use Salesforce, or you're using an Oracle solution which is in their cloud, or you're using O365, or you're using Reba or Cooper for procurement. These are all cloud-based solutions that will mean that's a cloud, for your organization. Then often there's a hyperscaler choice. You might say we want to move most of our workloads into an Azure or an AWS or one of the hyperscalers.
Right.
Even regulatory-wise, if you look at the financial services industry, even the regulator is saying adopt an 80-20 principle. Don't, depend on one cloud only, even, on the hyperscaler side. So, even the regulator is sort of leaning towards proliferating the multi-cloud. Customers do want choice, as you've said. They don't want to be locked in. They don't want to be dependent. And I don't think they have that opportunity. I think it's going to be, a status quo that even in South Africa, we are seeing a large number of multi-cloud environments within the customer base.
It's so interesting. I mean, you think of all the other possibilities. I mean, if you just look at the principle and how, the journey has been for the IT industry, and, the channel, for example, has been a key route, to get access to the cloud. Many organizations have gone that way, but that in itself is being disrupted as well at the moment. And that particular model, people are looking at it differently. So what does the channel need to do to adapt to these changes and this disruption that's happening within their own industry?
Okay, that's a very interesting question, because it's not something that's unique to the IT industry or the software industry. If you have a look across industries at how, the likes of Airbnb and, any state agencies and insurance, companies or brokers, we've all heard, let's cut out the middleman. We know that slogan. And I think this is the same thing is absolutely happening in this IT or, computing space with cloud. What's happening is the vendors are extending their set of services. So where they previously almost, if you look at software vendors, just sold the licenses for the software, but the whole piece that needed to go around that was provided by an ecosystem of channel reseller and system integrator type of partners. And now with the vendors turning these solutions into cloud, it means they are actually provisioning the hardware. So they're making the infrastructure available. They are operationalizing that software. They're doing the upgrades and the updates to make sure the customer's always using the latest version. They're providing the disaster recovery. They've got the 24/7 support available. And all those pieces of the stack, which were traditionally offered by a channel of some sort, now is more countable on the part of the vendor. So exactly, the channel has to reinvent themselves to some degree. Otherwise, they are going to be disintermediated. The things that I believe they should or could be doing is, the channel still provides the reach to the end customer. Often the vendor can't necessarily get to the customer or find the customer. They don't necessarily have the relationships. The channel still has the relationships. Often they've got the industry domain expertise. They have an understanding of that customer's business. They have an intimacy with their business processes. And I think they have to provide that business process consulting. They can assist the customer with the selection and evaluation process of which cloud and how to get to cloud. They can provide ability to integrate. That integration is always a problem that's never going to go away because, as we said, we're going to have multi-cloud environments. We're also going to still probably for a time have a hybrid mix of cloud and on-premise. So you're going to have this integration between your cloud solutions and your on-premise solutions. And, so those are the kinds of things that the channel companies are going to have to focus on, training people, providing that value add, but really focusing on what is that value add to make them relevant to both the vendor as well as to the end customer.
So many interesting things to think about there, and really interesting how the disruption is happening in every single sector. And if you look at where it's going to go, I don't think we'll ever go back to the way we were doing business before. COVID-19 has changed everything, but we will come out of this crisis somewhere or another. Tech leaders and are going to have to rethink of how they're going to do business and what their priorities are going to be. Where should these tech leaders be focusing on? You hear many people talking about customer experience, a big focus on AI as a differentiator in business, big data analytics. Where does one begin to look at focusing after this crisis is over?
Well, I don't think it's about when the crisis is over. I think it's from today, actually. And if you haven't started already, I think you could have problems. It's something, digitization broadly. I think what companies, IT leaders have to do is look at where and which components of their business need to be digitized. It's not that hard. If you have a look at the digital transformation journey, a lot of organizations sort of delayed it or they didn't know where to start. It seemed like too big a problem to tackle. COVID has forced organizations to look at that. They have no option. It is a reality. And it is across industry. It doesn't matter whether you're a government department or whether you're a finance, company or whether you're in manufacturing. You have to look at what part of your business you can digitize and take that step. Start somewhere. And then if I go sort of further in more detail in terms of the focus areas, what I think IT leaders need to look at, and you mentioned, but number one is the new workplace, the fact that they need to look at this digital workforce. Where are they working? How are they working? What hardware are they using? They're using their own laptops. What network are they on? Are their own private Wi-Fi's? What security do they need in order to make sure that they can operate in a secure fashion for your business? What kind of backup and recovery tools do they need? Because they're now working from home and they may not be backing up their solutions every day because they're not in the office and you were taking care of that. So what is it that the employee needs? I think collaboration, digital work, information flow, so that they can actually get their jobs done. So that's the one key part of the focus area. And the other part, absolutely, customer experience. We're now operating in this physically distanced world. We're not seeing our customers face to face. We're not shaking their hands. We're not looking them in the eye. We are, but maybe over a screen. How do you ensure that the customer still has, the right experience dealing with your organization, that they get the service that they expect, that they feel nurtured and feel important to you? And, and technology can help And I think we're going to start, absolutely, we're going to see a little, uptick in the adoption of things like AI, better, analytics, better communication, collaboration tools, even with our customers, so that we can make sure that we are still able to engage with them as we would have in a pre-COVID world.
Let's just go back to the cloud for a second, because I mean that's the critical part of this whole journey. It is kind of the backbone, the nervous system that kind of links all of this up together. Many people watching this right now will think, well, there's uncertainty, you might be thinking of doing something differently. What advice do you give to IT leaders, regardless of where they might find themselves in the cloud journey? What advice would you give them with regards to their journey into the cloud?
Aki, I think the things that maybe held some companies back have gone away. We used to hear issues around bandwidth, latency, the cost element, the maturity of cloud, security, data sovereignty. These were all excuses, but it was because it was the fear of the unknown. And I think if you asked a startup business today, literally they're starting a new business today, are they going to go and buy a whole lot of hardware, tin, and put it in their office and hire an IT geek to run it? No, they're not. They would basically start their business today with subscription to cloud for everything that they need to run their business. And cloud has now matured, and it is available on an enterprise scale to any business. There is no reason not to be delving into that. It is not just for startups. It's for any organization today. So what you have to do is number one, you have to understand the different patterns. We're seeing many different cloud patterns. We've got the DIY public cloud, where you go and you buy sign up a consumable sort of contract with a hyperscaler, but you take care of everything else yourself. We've got private managed clouds, where maybe the vendor provides all of those services in the stack that I mentioned before, which is possibly a bit easier because it's a single SLA and a single relationship to worry about with that particular vendor. We've got SaaS, software as a service, where you're just subscribing to, literally a service that operates somewhere in the clouds. You don't even know where, doesn't matter, but it serves a purpose for your business. All of these patterns, you need to understand what they are. You need to then look at what is your preferred type of cloud deployment model for your business need. You need to consider the costs. Moving to the cloud costs money. It requires, it costs money. Yes, over time, clearly it's meant to be a lower total cost of ownership for your business, but there are costs involved with moving to the cloud. You need to consider the regulatory requirements. If you're in industry, government, financial services, where there are rules, you need to consider the data sovereignty. What type of data I'm actually putting into this cloud? Am I allowed to put it in a cloud that doesn't perhaps reside within my borders of my country? So these things are all considerations. And then, you make the selection, make the decision on what makes sense for your business. And then also the approach from there is, how do you actually make that transition? Normally we're seeing this movement into the cloud is a multi-year journey. It's not going to happen overnight. But how do you make that transition? Do you, as I said, maybe it's a hybrid approach where you have a application that you're subscribing, but it's still integrating into your on-premise, data or systems that you're using for other things. Is it a whole lift and shift, or as we like to call it, a migrate to modernize, where you actually just take your entire environment and you move it into the cloud and then you operate it from there in one big bang? Or do you have a phased approach and maybe do it in bits and pieces, maybe a bigger phase first, test it properly, make sure that it's working for your business, and then have subsequent phases. So, these are all options, and I think that's why it is, it's very important to get executive buy-in. It is very important to have a strategic approach to moving to the cloud, not a tactical one. It does require significant investment, but the benefits are worth it, and it's clear, that's been shown, And we're seeing it because of the uptake and the adoption of cloud so aggressively in the market.
Yeah. Well, ignore or procrastinate your journey to the cloud at your own peril. That is the message out to businesses. You just cannot ignore it. It is the differentiator that's going to make great businesses and businesses that are going to fail. Julie Tregurtha, the Regional Vice President for Sales at Opentext for Africa, we thank you for your time and your insights, and we wish you well on your journey.
Thank you very much, Aki. Thank
Cheers.
you so much for the opportunity. Bye.